Well, folks, New Hampshire Democrats could be in huge trouble in the 2026 Senate race in New Hampshire. With the retirement of incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen, it leaves a huge gap in the Democrat Party and leaves the party very, very vulnerable in this state. Not just in the state of New Hampshire, but also throughout the country in the 2026 Senate map that puts Democrats at a huge disadvantage relative to the Republican Party. The way things are going, the GOP and Trump could expand their margin in the U.S. Senate to potentially 54, 55, or 56 seats in 2026. So let's jump into it all today to jump into it. But before we do, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. Now, recently, incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen announced that she will not be running for re-election in New Hampshire. Now, we know that New Hampshire is a very nuanced state when it comes to their politics. We're going to make a really big contrast here between a couple different positions. So let's start off with 2024. In 24, Kamala Harris won the state of New Hampshire by roughly 2.5, almost 3 points. By about 22,000 votes, Kamala Harris won the state by. Let's jump back to 2020, when President Biden won the state by roughly 7 points in that election. Actually, a little bit more than 7 points. A pretty comfortable margin in a state that has a Republican governor, a Republican Senate, a Republican legislator. It's like that's pretty tough when you have a Republican state that the Democrats are consistently winning. And to be honest with you, the Republicans have not won New Hampshire since, I believe, 1988, when George H.W. Bush won his one term that he would serve in 1988. That was the last time the Republicans won New Hampshire. And like we said, the state is very, very nuanced. All positions are held, all of the statewide positions at the federal government are held by Democrats. You have both Senate seats are held by Democrats, along with both of the representatives are held by Democrats. And we're going to look at New Hampshire state government. We'll see it right here. That both U.S. Senate seats are held by Democrats. Both U.S. House of Representatives seats are held by Democrats as well. It's just, they've got a stronghold when it comes to those federal positions. But when you look at the state, on the state level, the New Hampshire General Court has a 16 or an 8-vote majority over the Democrats. The Republicans as well have a 50, maybe a little less than 50 seat majority in their House of Representatives in New Hampshire. Also, at the same time, when you have the governor, the current governor of New Hampshire, is a Republican who won, this isn't a great margin, to be honest with you. This is a comfortable margin, but relative to what Chris Sununu was winning by previously, this isn't a great margin by any stretch of the imagination. It's like this is a lot lower than what it was before. But you can see here that the Senate seats and the House seats and the governor's mansion are all held by Republicans in New Hampshire. Everything except those federal seats, Senate and House of Representatives, are held by the GOP. But at the same time, this state never voted for Donald Trump. And like we said, the last time they voted for the GOP was 1988. 1988. It's like kind of how embarrassing. But here in the state, the GOP has a huge, and I mean huge, opportunity to win a U.S. Senate seat. Initially, the former governor, Chris Sununu, declined to run for this seat. He said, nope, not going to happen. I'm not running. I'm going to go into the private sector and make some money. But now that incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen announced that she is not going to be running for re-election in 2026, Sununu has had a change of mind, you could say. He is really considering jumping in this race. He's done some interviews with CNN and CNBC, really considering, has made a lot of talks with people in D.C. About going there, because this is a seat he could 100% win. 100%. And I'm going to show you why Chris Sununu may be the best choice for Republicans and why it could spell huge disaster for the Democrats in the upcoming election. So, in 2022, a year that was not great for Republicans nationwide, Chris Sununu won re-election by about 15 points in a state that voted in 2020 and 24 for the Democrat on the ballot in the presidential race. Jump to 2020. This is a big contrast I want to make here. Chris Sununu, the Republican, won the state by over 30 points. By over 30 points, a Republican, Chris Sununu, won a statewide race. At the same time, shall we say, that Shaheen, the incumbent Democrat senator at the time, won re-election by 16 points. Look at this map here. Completely blue, completely red, same election. It is the same exact election, the same ballot. People went onto the same ballot, and the majority, overwhelming majority of people chose Chris Sununu and Shaheen. And if we're going to pull it, all on the same ballot, also a majority, not overwhelming, but a majority of people voted for President Biden in New Hampshire. So you can clearly see Chris Sununu in a race where you have, and by the way, we could also look at the House races. Both House races were won by Democrats in that election as well. Let's just put that out there. Chris Sununu is a very, very popular Republican in the state of New Hampshire. There is no doubt about it. He knows how to win in bluer states. But it's not really a blue state. It's blue at the federal level, because at the state level, it is a Republican stronghold. Jump back to 2018. Chris Sununu won 7 points. Tough election for Republicans. 2018, Trump's first midterms. Chris Sununu still tough race, only won by 7 points. At the same time, when in Biden's midterm, he won by 15 points. Let's go back to 2016. 2016, Sununu barely won. Barely, I tell you, won this race here. He won it by about 2 points. He then took this seat and turned it into a Republican stronghold by 2020. Within 4 years, this is where we're at. Now, granted, by 24 was a smaller margin. Absolutely. But it is still a much, much better result than you would see at the presidential level, or in the Senate races, or in the U.S. House races. That's the reality of the situation that the GOP is in right here, and right now. Sununu is able to win, even when the GOP isn't winning the state at the presidential level, or the U.S. Senate seats, or the federal representative seats. Even when they're not winning those, Chris Sununu somehow is able to win by large margins in the state. Because we know the Democrats have a very, very tough race coming up. Very tough race. We're going to look at the 2026 Senate map. We know the Democrats, it's going to be tough for them. There's no doubt about that. You're looking at the map right now. This is how it currently is laid out. Michigan, and let's see. This is the current map right now. Your toss-up states that you can say, and I'm not going to say, okay, see, and I don't even agree with this right here. This is a bunch of BS. These are going to be the states that are going to be targeted the most. This is where all the money is going to be at right here. I 100% agree. Where am I? I'm going to put Minnesota as a lean Democrat. I'm only saying that we see some power coalescing behind the Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan there. The AG Keith Ellison just came out, endorsed Peggy Flanagan to run for the Senate seat. Tina Smith, another Democrat that's not running for re-election in 2026. Tilt Democrat is where I'm at right now. But I think Michigan, that's a toss-up. Georgia, I'm going to put this, if Brian Kemp jumps in the race, this is a lean Republican state. North Carolina, I'm believing this is a toss-up. New Hampshire, if Chris Sununu's in this race, I think this is a lean red. And Maine, I believe, is a lean red. And I'm going to explain why. First of all, Michigan, Gary Peters is not running for re-election. It's going to be a serious battle. You're either going to see someone like a Mike Rogers, a Tudor Dixon, or a John James on the Republican side in Michigan. On the Democrat side, you have Mallory McMorrow, who could jump in this race, and also Haley Stevens, a representative, I believe she's from the 7th or the 11th congressional district, who is looking to jump in this race. Look at Georgia. John Ossoff, who is a very, very vulnerable Democrat up for re-election, barely won in 2020, a rough year for Republicans. He was able to win in a runoff against, I believe, David Perdue. Now, Brian Kemp, you have a very, very popular governor in Brian Kemp. He went from winning the state by about 1.5 points to winning the state by about 7-8 points in his re-election bid. Same thing with Ron DeSantis. Won by less than a point in 2018. By 22, he won the state by 1.5 million votes. Huge, huge shift. Now, the North Carolina, that's a tough one. You have Tom Tillis, who you could say is not very popular with the Republican Party there. There have been a lot of polls done in the Republican primary showing that Laura Trump holds like a 30 or 40% lead over him when she hasn't even jumped in the race. And she lives in Florida, so she would have to move. There's a lot that would have to happen for her to jump in this race. Tom Tillis has been censured by the Republican Party in New Hampshire multiple times now. Plus, you have a Democrat in Roy Cooper who's going to run, former governor, knows how to win. You know, Roy Cooper run in 2016 and in 2020 at the same time when President Trump won the state in 2016 and 2020. The same thing happened in 24. Trump won the state of North Carolina. The Democrat governor candidate won as well. Now, granted, you could say there were some issues with the, how should I put this, the issues that the Republican candidate presented. But ultimately, the Democrats know how to win in North Carolina in statewide elections when Trump is on the ballot. They know how to do that. Roy Cooper is a very popular governor in North Carolina. It's kind of the same thing you're looking at in Georgia, in New Hampshire, just not for the Republicans, it's for the Democrats. You have a very popular governor who's going to run for the Senate there. It's going to be tough for the Republicans in North Carolina, and I'm going to consider this a toss-up at this point. I think there's a lot more that we need to see. But also, we know that Tillis in his re-election bid in 2020 was trailing his opponent by like 10 points leading up to Election Day and still was able to squeak out a win by a point or two. So we'll see what happens. New Hampshire, we already talked about it. I think it's a lean red if Sununu jumps in the race. Maine, you have Susan Collins. She's been the senator since 1997. I am not worried about the Democrats flipping this seat. I just am not. Susan Collins is very well liked in Maine. There is no doubt about that. She's very, very well liked there. I'm not worried about it, really, in the slightest. Could it be close? Sure. Is it going to be closer than 2020? Sure. Am I worried about it? No, not really. But this is how the Republicans need to get. If they want to get to a 54, 55, 50 seat majority, they need to flip Georgia. They need to flip New Hampshire. They need to hold North Carolina, and they need to flip Michigan. If they want to get to 57, take the whole shebang, they need to take Minnesota, which that's going to be really, really tough. Really tough, especially if Royce White is leading it in Minnesota. It's like there was a recent report that came out that showed Royce White in Minnesota, the candidate in 2024, spent like 70% of all campaign funds that he got donated to him on credit card processing fees. So potentially a pretty big scandal with Royce White in Minnesota. So I'm going to say this is a lean Democrat seat as of now. But you can also, Republicans, where else can they look? I think the only other place you can really look is Virginia. Mark Warner up for re-election. You also have a governor who cannot run again in Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin could jump in this race. Do I think it will? I think if Glenn Youngkin jumped in this race, I would classify it, instead of likely, I would say lean, but I'd still say the Democrats have the upper hand there. But you really never know until it happens. So we're going to see what happens. This is kind of where I see the race could end up at the end of this year. But as of right now, this is where I'm at. For sure, a 54-seat majority for the Republicans. They for sure pick up at least one seat, or pick up 2 seats. Will they be able to hold this and pick up Michigan? Time will tell. Time's going to tell. Because even if everything went perfect for the Democrats, they hold Michigan, they hold Georgia, they pick up North Carolina, they hold New Hampshire, and they pick up Maine. They still are in a minority. They still only have a 49-seat minority, which is a lot better than they had before. And if there's a defective Republican, it's like it could make it very, very easy for the Democrats to capitalize on that. It's like obviously there'd have to be 2 Democrats or Republicans that would have to vote against the party in order for the Democrats to really have any power. But that just makes it even tougher. You know, if the GOP wants to pass bills through and they have to overcome the filibuster, that's what's going to be required is Democrat support at that point. It's going to make it very tough for Trump's agenda, especially if the Republicans lose the House. They can make it very, very tough for them if that happens. And we know the Senate GOP fundraising arm, the National Senatorial Republican Committee, has said that New Hampshire is a top target for them, along with Michigan and Georgia, but New Hampshire is a top target. And now that Chris Sununu is running, I would say it's an even higher target. I could say it's like number 2 target in the Senate would be New Hampshire. Because the difference between New Hampshire and Michigan is in Michigan, you don't have a very popular Republican who's running, who has a solid electoral history. You have that in New Hampshire, a Republican who knows how to win when Democrats win at the same time. You have someone who has a good electoral history to win. But all in all, we know that there's going to be a lot of money poured into this race here. Democrats could be in huge trouble going into this race here. Because we know on the Democrat side, Chris Pappas, who is the representative from the 1st Congressional District, is going to jump in the race. He won, he won back. Let's see what it looked like. And see, it's just so weird how it is. But, I like it. But we're going to see what happens. Chris Sununu definitely could win this race and could be a pickup for the GOP. So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. We will catch you next time.